Hi everyone, this is Ben Preston and this is Debrief 2 for the Social Studies group. You can see the names of all three of our team members listed on the first slide here. And what we're going to do is we're going to run it similar to the way we did last time. We have three topics. One of us will go into detail on each one of the topics. And we talked about a lot of things, a lot of different topics in our group sessions over the last couple weeks. But what we settled on was three topics that we felt pretty strongly about that we wanted to share with the class, and we felt sharing the insights from those topics was important. Here's our agenda and the three topics that we settled on. The first one is going to be professional learning communities, and that's going to be covered by Remy. And then we have privacy in the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, and teaching ethics. Jack is going to cover that one. And the last one is teacher social media usage, and I will cover that one.
Hello, my name is Remy Valdivia, and I'm going to talk about PLC, CLT, and collaboration in education. Here's what. It's common knowledge that the education system in the United States lags behind several other nations around the world. As educators, we need to innovate and find strategies for learning that serve all of our students and help our teachers improve on their effectiveness. So what? Well, studies show that collaboration and feedback between teachers, such as in PLC, CLT groups, can positively impact student learning and outcomes, as well as improving teacher effectiveness. Well, now what? We have to break free from the finite concept of best practices and continue innovating to find better practices. This is because education is changing all of the time. The best practices of 10, 20, and 30 years ago no longer apply. They've become obsolete. Just as our education is changing, so are our student populations. We need to find new strategies to best serve them. With PLC and CLT groups, teachers can share teaching practices and compare student performance. They also provide a forum to ask questions and get support. When collaborating on instruction, teachers can compare how students were successful and unsuccessful on different projects and assignments. They can compare data from these common assessments and find new ways to tweak and to reassess their lesson plans. PLC and CLT groups can also provide a forum for more experienced teachers to mentor newer teachers. And vice versa, newer teachers can use their PLC and CLT groups to introduce new ideas and to try and bring a fresh perspective to their departments. In essence, PLC and CLT collaboration can help bring about the best results in our students and improve education across the board.
What's up, y'all? My name is Jack, and today, for my portion of the debrief, I'd like to talk to you all about privacy and FERPA within the context of teaching ethics. Now, FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, and I stumbled across it in my research while I was looking up stuff for the case study that I chose to do, the case study about peer grading and its impact on students' rights to the privacy of their personal records. Now, the case that Dr. Keaton recommended for this particular case study, Falvo versus Owasso Independent School District in 2001, involved the Supreme Court ruling on a particular incident in which a student felt a strong sense of embarrassment upon involving themselves in a peer grading activity where their work was perceived as negatively performing when compared to another student's work. And the Supreme Court ultimately ruled that a student's grades were not considered within the protective umbrella of FERPA, at least within a peer grading context, as students had only momentary access to these grades, other students at least, and they weren't, outside educators or personnel. And while I agree with this constitutional ruling, from my own personal experience as a behavioral therapist at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, I have found that the educational environment can be severely harmed when students are enabled to feel shame or embarrassment within the context of comparison to others. Um, the person to know that I looked at for this week, Prudence Carter. She's the dean of graduate. She's the dean of the Graduate School of Education at Berkeley, and she wrote a paper recently called "Educational Equity Demands Empathy," where she talks about how we have cultivated this very narrow-minded national culture about teaching and learning that's centered around academic achievement and standardized test scores. And she talks about this mindset that overemphasizes the quote unquote me and the quote unquote mine, and how we neglect how when we lose sight of others' well-being, inequalities can endure and proliferate, and how there needs to be a greater focus on empathy within educational contexts. I feel like as teachers, we have to empathize with how our students might feel when they're placed under these situations, like peer grading, where their work might be compared to another student's, um, from a very flat and one-sided perspective, and the focus is taken off of their own learning and their own and if the focus is taken off of their learning and their advancement and centered on how they stack up to others. And I feel like we need to, as teachers, when we're planning these kinds of assignments, we gotta, just think about how our students might feel when they're placed within this situation. We have to decide whether peer grading is is a viable strategy within that lens. Um, yeah, that should be it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Ben here. Our group had a really good discussion about social media and how teachers can and should use it. So, breaking it down in our format, here's what, and the bottom line as we see it, is that teachers are held to a higher standard and a different standard than the other members of their communities. And that's just something that teachers need to be aware of as they enter the profession and go forward and start to think about how their roles as teachers affect them and affect their communities. The so what with that is that teachers need to be actively aware of what they're posting on social media. And the three of us talked about this, and one of the things that we all kind of came to after we discussed our social media presences is that all three of us have limited our own social media presence in recent years, and all of us keep a really tight hold on our privacy settings for anything we do use. And we were all doing that before we got to this part of the unit. So I imagine that a lot of other people in the teacher program are doing the same thing, but that's just something that I think everyone needs to be aware of. And what I think this means is that teachers need to actively curate your online presence. And you need to try and keep track of what's out there. Keep track of what people can see, what pictures are on any of your different social media platforms, what posts people can look at, who can see you on Twitter, who can see you on Instagram, what they can see, all that type of stuff. You need to actively look at that. In my people to know research for the week, the person that I looked up was Pedro Noguera, and he's the dean of the School of Education at the University of Southern California, and he has a Twitter page. So I looked it up just to kind of see what his online presence looked like, and he's got a really active Twitter account that he posts on regularly, and he's got over 50,000 followers on Twitter. His content that he posts is a lot of content related to his job and interests, but to me it was very clear that he is very aware of what he posts online, and that Twitter page is his front-facing, forward-facing Twitter page, and I thought that was a pretty good example of how you could keep an online presence, keep posting on things that you like and that interest you, but keep it at a professional level. And then for our now what, we also talked about this, is that you need to actively manage it, but you're also allowed to have a life outside of school. And one example that I came up with was alcohol. And if a teacher posts a picture of themselves going out to a brewery on a weekend and having a beer with their friends, smiling out in the sunshine, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If anybody's going to call you out on that, I would probably disagree with them that that's inappropriate for teachers to post. Now, if you're posting yourself a picture of yourself and you're clearly intoxicated, you're at a party, you're chugging beers, that's probably something that you don't want online. So two of the same things are two different activities, both involving alcohol, but both very different. So think about things like that when you're posting online. And then one of the best practices that all three of us talked about was that teachers should probably not actively friend or follow or actively allow the friend or following of their current students in any social media accounts. This just opens a whole can of worms that you probably don't want to deal with as you're keeping a professional distance and your student-teacher relationships that you just don't want to deal with. The one exception for that would be if you have social media specifically for your school or a class that doesn't have anything personal on it that you're using to communicate with students for a class. That's probably okay. Thanks everyone. Have a good day.